There was a freak incident at a gas pump in Toronto that left a man with critical injuries. He was struck by a gas pump hose after another driver drove off with a nozzle in the tank. CTV's Janice Golding has details.
A maintenance technician begins the repair work on this pump just before the noon hour. The site where a gas nozzle was ripped from the dispenser and struck a man around 5:30 p.m. yesterday.
We received reports of a man in his 60s exiting from a gas station kiosk. At the same time, a man in his 20s was leaving the gas station. However, the gas nozzle was still intact to his car. When the gentleman driving his vehicle drove away, the gas hose ripped from the pump and unfortunately struck the man in his 60s.
The blow from the hose knocked the man over and the fall resulted in life-threatening injuries.
It's kind of shocking to me, to be honest.
You forget. Sometimes it happens to me that I go and pay and then I leave. And I didn't put the gas.
That's pretty close to home as far as I'm concerned. Quite frankly, it's scary too. How do these things happen anyway? What are people using for sense?
Some mistakes do happen there, right? So it's bad.
While residents in the area reflect on what happened, police are reminding people to stay aware of their surroundings and if you are getting gas.
Always take a second look at your gas tank and to ensure that the nozzle has been removed from your vehicle and placed back onto the gas pump safely.
Police say charges have been laid in this investigation, which is ongoing. Janice Golding, CTV News.
Have you filled up your gas tank lately? Since April 1st, the price has come down, but have you noticed some fluctuation in that price? To talk more, let's bring in David Soberman. He's a professor at the Rotman School of Management at the University of Toronto, and that's where we've reached him. Hi there, David.
Good afternoon.
Okay, on April 1st, motorists were rejoicing. I know why was gas prices dropped with the consumer carbon tax removed. Are we going to see volatility in gas prices?
Well, I think we will right now because what we've seen is a big drop in the price of crude oil. I think this partially is driven by economic uncertainty and perhaps reduced production, reduced need for fuel. So when you couple that with the carbon tax elimination, some people have seen, drops of 25 cents compared to where it was a week ago, which is pretty good if you happen to have to fill your car up.
How true. Sometimes we see those spikes, right, by 5 to 10 cents, at least in northeastern Ontario, and then they come back down. What dictates prices for the price of gasoline? How does that work? Tell our viewers.
Well, there's a couple of things that affect it. Obviously, there's the worldwide demand for oil, the worldwide supply for oil. But remember, oil is also priced in US dollars. So all of those things have an effect. So for example, a drop in the Canadian dollar can cause an increase. Increased demand can cause an issue. Even fires in refineries, which we had, I think, in Texas about a year ago, that can also cause a change in price. But for the most part, it's driven by the worldwide price of oil, which is a function of, first of all, the supply. So obviously the OPEC countries have an effect on that. When they release extra stocks, that tends to reduce prices. And beyond that, there's the overall economic performance of the globe. And when the economies are doing well, there tends to be higher demand for oil.
Okay, why is there such a disparity in the price depending upon where you live? In Sudbury, 121, 127, Sault Ste. Marie, up to 128. Timmins, much higher. In Alberta, in Edmonton, like 124. Why is there such a disparity when it comes to the price of gasoline?
Well, as far as I know, there's also differences in how far the gas has to travel and where it's coming from. And I think with the communities that you named, there isn't actually gasoline being refined there. So, my guess, I could be wrong, but I think it probably comes from Sarnia. So some of the differences may well be due to the differences that are charged by the companies that are delivering the oil to the gas stations in those communities.
Since the federal government dropped the consumer carbon tax, how is the government, do you think, going to make up that shortfall? Or even the provincial government, right? When gas prices are lower, the province and the federal governments don't receive as much, right?
Well, that's a really good question. I think given certainly at the federal level, because we're in the middle of an election, They're more concerned about the positive effect of having gotten rid of the carbon tax than how they're going to make up the difference. In fact, my perspective on the way governments have operated in this country for quite some time, and this goes back to even before the current liberal administration, they don't seem to be too concerned about making ends meet. That's why we run deficits. I'm not a great believer in deficits, but it seems like the politicians that run the country have a different perspective.
David, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
No problem.
David Soberman was our guest, and to read more about gas prices and other stories related to the economy, don't forget, head to our website, ctvnewsnorthernontario.ca.